All right, everyone. Great to see you here at the Voice of College Football. I'm sure we will all commit that final score of the Buckeye spring game, scarlet and gray, to memory, 34-33, if you're keeping score at home. Or as somebody once said, even if you're alone. Welcome in. Sorry for the delay. I was taking in the spring game at a buddy's house and needed to, of course, arrive at a different location. Appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. We will dig in on what we saw from Columbus today and, of course, take your comments and questions and also your calls. If anyone would like to call in, we will drop the link both in the chat and here at some point in the description section of the video. Super chat contributions, of course, are welcome here at the Voice of College Football. And there's the link. So what did we witness in Columbus today and what did it mean? Well, it meant about as much as the other 14 practices. So let's start with that premises. The premise is that there are 15 practices and they are all roughly of the same value. There are typically 3 to 4 scrimmages that carry more weight because they're actually competing against each other. Now, we saw in specific drives that the team was tackling. There was actually hitting and tackling. I was sorely disappointed from the first snap that we didn't even have thudding. That's a new term to me. I'm sure it's been brought up in the past because it's been a thing during college football spring games now for quite some time, but it was most notably mentioned by Mark Stoops of Kentucky this week. So I looked up thudding to see exactly what that is. So we saw it on display. We saw some combination for much of the first half of thudding and tapping, playing touch football, which shows us very little. It shows the coaches something, or else they would not do it. I always thought that if there's going to be a spring game for any team where there is simply touch football, that the place to most notably look at value of evaluation, it's on the perimeter with the wide receivers going up against defensive backs. It's certainly not trying to determine whether a rusher can bring down a quarterback or a tackler can bring down a running back or a wide receiver in the open field, because that's completely been obliterated from the standpoint of evaluation. But I was glad to see that there was some tackling and some live game action aside from the quarterbacks themselves for a good portion of into the second quarter, into the second half. And again, we had a pick six of sorts to close out the game and give the gray team, I believe, a couple points there at the end, but they still lost 34-33. I did not see the scoring off the top of the broadcast, nor does it matter what the scoring was. So there was some crazy combination of scoring based on defensive performance and special teams as well. All right, this is what stood out to me. First and foremost, there was wind. There was wind all over the place. So that was an issue throughout the game. That was an issue with the quarterbacks, and that is a point of adversity that quarterbacks have to deal with, especially if they're going to play in the north. But if they're going to play anywhere, there's wind everywhere. We far too often talk about the climate being a factor in football games and for quarterback play, but there is one factor that exists everywhere. It can be 85 degrees and you can have wind. It's most associated with colder weather, but you can have wind anywhere. So the wind is difficult for young quarterbacks because they're not accustomed to it. They don't have the experience against it. And also, of course, for the quarterbacks who have lesser arms. I don't think that's really a factor for the most part in this quarterback room of 5, but we did see it play with one Julian Salan in particular. So the wind was a factor. I caught a few plays of the beginning of the Penn State spring game at Happy Valley. It looked as though the wind was even more of a factor, was even worse in Pennsylvania today. So let's take that into consideration. On the first drive, G. Scott made a very nice adjustment to the football on a sideline catch in which he not only twisted his body, contorted his body, reached down for a hands catch that was thrown behind him. I just thought it was a very fluid play. He looked very natural doing it. G. Scott with that reception. All right, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson are as advertised. And could they show their tackle breaking skills? No. And we don't need to see it. We know that both of these guys can dodge and they can also run over. So that was very much on display. We could see them dodge and we could see both the acceleration and the quickness, the darting, the movement, the shakes, the bakes in the hole by both of these guys and in the open field, both within the blocked scheme, the hole that was provided. And then once they got into the secondary a few times as well, there was actually a time in which Travion Henderson was ruled to be down. And that was by about that much, or he would have been on his way for a touchdown. So those two guys are elite and they are proven commodities. Emeka Buka made one heck of a catch along the left sideline with one hand. Just all of a sudden, the ball looked like it was going out of bounds and was clearly overthrown. And all of a sudden, you just saw it stop. And Emeka Buka, I think Ohio State fans are excited to see what he is going to show us in 2024. That should be similar to 2022 when he was healthy and did not deal with a high ankle sprain. 74 catches, well over 1,000 yards 2 years ago, limited to 41 catches and not as many explosive plays. And his calling card is not as an explosive player, just a premium route runner. And oh yeah, the hands are elite as well. Much talk during the day and the broadcast about Jeremiah Smith, of course. We got to see him catch a few passes. We'll see if we can catch up with some stats. Not that those are very meaningful, but I would say that every time any of the coaches on the broadcast, and we're talking about Urban Meyer on the broadcast, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, they had a session with him, Brian Hartline as well. I don't remember hearing from Jim Knowles, but the first thing that they all brought up when the question was posed, what do you want to see out of a spring game? And it was more specifically that question fielded by Urban Meyer about the quarterback position. And he said production. And Ryan Day said production. And Chip Kelly said production. We want to see production. Okay. If we were playing real football on a Saturday afternoon in the fall, we know what production is. Points, yardage. Those are the two easiest quantifiers of production. But in a spring game, yeah, I thought that was a weak answer by all of them. I get it. We need a little bit more. What are you looking for? So with Emeka Buka, and we saw the contingent of wide receivers on display and on the interview on the sideline there with Jenny Tafton. It was interesting because there was an initial indication that Jeremiah Smith just didn't want to talk, but no, he had to run back because his team, his Scarlet team, got the ball back and they needed him. But Abuka spoke for everyone. There's a lot of pride in that room. They are coming back to win a championship. Jeremiah Smith, again, we didn't see anything crazy out of him. He did not have the opportunity to do anything crazy, but he is doing crazy things at practice. And what is making him special, according to the writers we talk to here on a regular basis, Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts, and Tony Gerdeman and Kevin Noon with Buckeye Huddle, when they've been at practice, what we're hearing out of other reports from practice. And then what we heard today out of Ryan Day in particular is, and from Joel Klatt, now that Klatt has been able to see Jeremiah Smith on the field. And I don't know if these guys prepped this week. I don't know if they discussed that or mentioned that at all during the broadcast, whether they just showed up to do today's broadcast or probably maybe prepped it to a certain extent, similar to a game broadcast during the fall, where they show up on a Wednesday or Thursday and they spend a couple days at practice, go through film breakdowns, and meet with the coaches and a couple key players. Probably didn't go to that extent, but I got to think that they've been in Columbus for a couple days to check out practice and watch Jeremiah Smith up close and personal. And Klatt says he looks like a fourth-year senior. Ryan Day made the same comment that it's not just the tangibles that we can all see, the tremendous talent, but the body type is fully ready to play big-time college football and produce, but also the maturity that he must have to be that good at this point. I know the talent, it's easy to write off the talent as this is the sole reason why this guy's this good. He was just blessed with all this talent. There are guys with near that much talent that never get to that place. So let's not discount the maturity at his age to develop himself, to listen to coaching, to work out, to be disciplined, to get himself ready and prepared, and to be in this place as the number one wide receiver and number one player in the country. You could tell that Ryan Day wanted to talk that narrative back a little bit. He just said, hey, we love what we see. He's got the talent, he's got the body build and frame, and he's showing the intangibles in regards to work ethic and leadership and want to, but let's just see it play out. Let's just watch it. Take your comments and questions right here at the Voice of College Football. The super chat's available. I'll look through the chat as well, and from top to bottom. And of course, we have left a link there in the chat as well if you would like to jump on board and talk Ohio State football with us. I did not get a screenshot of the Urban Meyer championship list of components that every championship team shows. He had a list of tangibles. He had a list of intangibles. The intangibles are, of course, more difficult to get a handle on because we don't know the toughness of a particular team. We don't know these things until we actually watch them play out on the field on Saturday throughout the entire fall. And even then, we only get a certain read on that. And not every team can win a national championship. And not every team that has the talent to win a national championship, even if they do all the right things, can win the national championship because there's only one that gets the job done. And those accolades went to a team, a school that Urban Meyer still, despite his now 18 through 24, I believe this is a seventh season under Ryan Day. 19 through 23 is 5 seasons. So a sixth season under Ryan Day, 6 years removed from Urban Meyer. He's been a professional broadcaster analyst for 6 years solely. Still can't bring himself to say the word Michigan. I respect that. But he mentioned the toughness aspect of Michigan football the last 3 years, and especially last year. Can't be discounted. So I thought it was, and I would actually have loved for Urban Meyer to have stopped on that full screen graphic and talked about that for 45 minutes. I could have listened to that because there's so much to uncover, and maybe the right people asking the right questions, then that would have been a great conversation. But of course, they're not going to spend 45 minutes. They're doing a television show. So there were tangibles. It starts with talent, of course. You've got to have talent. And really, everything under the talent moniker could be connected to talent, because other than talent, you just have to stay healthy. Because then if you've got the talent, like one of his tangibles was offensive line. So offensive line was the only one of the listed tangible items for Urban Meyer that I thought, I don't know if this team has an offensive line to win a national championship. They did not last year. Maybe this team wins the national championship with one of the best offensive lines in the country, but not with the 40th best offensive line in the country. Not winning the national championship, and did not, when all was said and done, didn't come close. But if they would have completed one drive against Michigan, maybe they would have come extremely close. So that we'll never know. But the offensive line has got to get better. This team is loaded everywhere else. Loaded. Two major question marks. Offensive line, especially at the guard position or on one side of the football, and the quarterback play. The quarterback play. Yes, the quarterback play. I am sure that Ohio State is going to receive adequate, good quarterback play, but is that going to be good enough? And I know that there's a narrative out there, and we talk about it all the time, and most Ohio State observers believe that they have so much talent everywhere else that the quarterback just has to be efficient. I get that place. I get that argument. Yes, much more so than just about any other conference or team in the country. The Ohio State quarterback this year can get away with that. Doesn't need to be dynamic, doesn't need to put the team on his back. Absolutely, I agree with that. But I don't know if just efficient and adequate quarterback play is going to get the job done to reach the kind of goals we're talking about. I think the quarterback's going to have to be one of the 10 to 15 best quarterbacks in the country. That's not just efficiency and accuracy or just protecting the football. That is making some throws. Otherwise, you don't take advantage of that great wide receiver core. We saw them all grouped together talking to Jenny Taft, Emeka Ibuka, Jeremiah Smith, Brandon Innes, who was not able to play today, Carnell Tate. Those guys have got to be highlighted, spotlighted, not as a one-dimensional passing team. No. Not as a team that can't run it, because they surely can. Or if they get the offensive line movement, will be able to. And with a quarterback, unlike what they've had the past 3 seasons, that you would have to take back to 2020 with Justin Fields, with a quarterback who is capable of threatening the defense running. He's not Justin Fields. He's not JT Barrett, but Will Howard, the presumed starter, can threaten a defense. Offensive line is by far the biggest concern on this team. And number 2 for me is the level of quarterback play. It's going to be fine. It's going to be good. And even the final stats may not give, at least from my perspective, a clear indication on whether Will Howard is going to help produce a championship. If he throws for 34 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, sounds like a good year. Might be a few too many picks, but he threw 10 last year against 24 touchdowns at Kansas State. I want to see, what does he do? What kind of numbers does he put up? This would answer the question. What are his numbers against Michigan, Oregon? Who else did they play that's worth anything? Michigan, Oregon. I forget if Penn State's on the schedule. I think they're off the schedule this year. Anyway, take the 3 or 4 best teams on the schedule. And then, of course, the playoff games or the Big Ten championship game. And what are those fourth quarter numbers for Will Howard if he wins the job? Let's talk about the other quarterbacks. The last quarterback we saw was Aaron Noland, who we know has been limited in practice, so he must be fine. He was out there running around. Saw him throw a pass or two. I don't know if we've got stats online yet. And then we've got Julian saying, I got to say, I was a bit disappointed there. I know the numbers were ugly, but forget the numbers. So he threw a pick on the final drive of the first half, the final drive for his offense, his team. And he didn't just have one thing go wrong on that play. To my perspective on the play, three things went wrong. Number one, he should have never made that decision. It was a poor decision to make. Number two, he made a late decision. He threw the ball late. And number three, it was a horrendous throw. He threw into the wind or whatever direction the wind was going. He was having a couple issues throwing to the far side of the field. So looking at the TV screen, the far side of the field, that was really poor. And we were all geared up to see 133 on the clock, 60 yards, 3 timeouts. Let's see Julian saying, well, he threw one in the ground and then he got that one picked off. And I believe the wind had something to do with both of those throws, but you're a big time quarterback. You got to make those throws. And then later on, he also had a couple ugly throws. He had another play going the other direction in the second half where he threw it well behind the receiver. He needed to throw it out toward the sideline, and it was woefully inside and should have been picked off. Lincoln Kienholz then takes over for what proved to be the final drive of the first half after the say-in pick by whomever it was. We'll go through the game recap. And Lincoln Kienholz delivers twice, 2 throws. Boom, on time, delivered. Psh, not necessarily a tight window, difficult throw, but downfield throws that required him to whip it in there, zing it downfield. Again, he didn't have to beat tight coverage. But those looked impressive to put Ohio State, to put his team, whichever team it was, I can't keep track of the scarlet and the gray, to keep the Lincoln Kienholz team, put them into field goal range. But then he made 2 bad plays. He took a sack, and this is one of the more difficult evaluations to make during these spring games are sacks, or when the quarterback breaks contain and they get brought down by 4 fingers on their jersey. Would they have broken the tackle? I've seen many times when there was no way that tackler in a real game was going to bring down that quarterback. They were free, but it's touch football. But Lincoln Kienholz should understand the situation, understand the way the game is being played, the practice is being conducted, and should have gotten rid of the football. And we got to see, this is one of the nice things. We don't know how this conversation would have gone during the actual practice, but we did see Ryan Day chastise and tear into Lincoln Kienholz. Again, maybe much more so if this was a closed practice, but Ryan Day didn't mind with the cameras right in his face. Still, what are you doing? You got to know the situation. Lincoln Kienholz put them in a bad spot there, took the sack, and then he delivered another pass downfield after he had thrown 2 or 3 really nice throws. Could have converted still despite the sack, and missed a wide open receiver. Just missed him, just overshot him way too high. And so that forced a 48-yard field goal attempt that missed. It was 3rd and 19. I don't know why Ryan Day didn't force Kienholz to run a 3rd and 19 play. If you want to see a field goal, let's say you get sacked and you've got no shot at a field goal, or he throws a pick. You're the head coach. It's the spring game. You can always say, get back here, boys. I want to see us try a 45-yard field goal. So I don't know why they wasted that play and that opportunity in that situation with like 11 seconds left in the first half on 3rd and 19, not to allow Keen Holtz to try to make his way out of a 3rd and 19. Then the other point in that sequence was that his helmet connection, his radio connection in his helmet went out. And who knows, maybe they do that intentionally. Regardless, he needed to have a backup plan, and he was just letting Chip Kelly know, I can't hear you. It's not working. Ryan Day's message was, have a plan. Have a plan. Brady Quinn talked about it. Have a plan. Know what you're going to do. This is going to happen. It does happen. So this is the part that an inexperienced quarterback is not going to. Maybe they have talked to their quarterbacks about that. Maybe they have not talked to their quarterbacks about that. That would be interesting to know. Has Ryan Day and the coaching staff, Corey Dennis, have they talked about the possibility that the radio goes out? Or have they not? And now they can address that. It's another good reason to have practice and have live game situations. My buddy noticed that on one side of the football that the center snaps were low and right. And then we started to track this, and I couldn't see who the center was. I don't know if it was 55, 62, or 65. I don't know if Seth McLaughlin was one of those centers, but it was right, 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 right. And it was right so many times that I thought, does Will Howard want the snap on the right? A couple of those throws were not a play designed to read the defense. Will Howard was throwing to the corner of the right end zone. So maybe, hey, if the snapper's that good, then he's that good. Or maybe he just has a propensity of snapping those footballs to the right side. This team is loaded. They need to figure out an offensive line, and they need to play elite offensive line play. And they need a quarterback who's going to make big plays. I understand they don't need quarterback to carry them, but I also don't believe that they can just have some run of the mill quarterback play that's just checking down constantly and not turning the ball over. That's not going to be good enough. I think it's somewhere in between those extremes of conservative game manager and dynamic playmaker. The quarterback's going to have to make some throws, going to have to make some key throws, difficult throws in fourth quarters at Autzen Stadium, in Columbus, the last weekend in November, college football playoff game, whatever. Going to have to be done. It is going to be expected. They are not going to win the Big Ten championship and beyond with somebody who just checks the ball down. Okay. Let's check out your comments here. I believe we're talking about quarterbacks, the Rod Favre quarterbacks who throw hard tend to force more passes through tight windows and throw more picks. Ralph says Ohio State will be in the portal for a quarterback, which seems crazy. Okay, Ralph is basically saying, I guess here, that they don't have the quarterback to win at all. So they're going to go to the portal. I don't know that quarterback's going to be available, and I don't think that's going to happen. But as was stated on our Buckeye show this week, not just about Ohio State, but about all of college football, there are going to be some crazy names and some crazy situations in the transfer portal that don't seem to make sense. And Ralph means, yes, some So Ohio State won't be in the portal. Their current quarterbacks will be in the portal. Yes. One, almost for sure. One, you got to think for sure will be in the portal. And two's a possibility. But unless money becomes a factor, so understand, regardless of the situation from a personnel standpoint, if money gets thrown at somebody, they can always take off. But I don't see Aaron Noland or Julian Sayin leaving. And I think Will Howard's going to be there. I think it's going to either be Lincoln Keen Holtz or Devin Brown or both. That would be my guess. The Rod Farva believes Aaron Noland will not stay. Maybe not. Mike 3883, Chip Kelly and Ryan Day should be the best combos who handled the new helmet communication given their coaching history. It's a good point. Good comments from Chip Kelly. This is off the Ohio State beat to a certain extent because Chip Kelly, the conversation with him was more about him personally, was more about him and why he is in Columbus, why he has this job. I wanted to hear from him, and he didn't tell us anything that we didn't already anticipate. He wants to coach football. He wants to coach football, and being the head coach, he could not go into the positional group meetings on a regular basis and stay for the entire time and take part and be involved and be engaged all the time. He wants to coach football, and this is going to be a trend that we are going to see going forward. That there could be coaches coming up through the ranks that see this play out, and they're going to weigh more heavily an NFL opportunity. Not just talking about head coaches, I'm talking about guys that are assistant coaches, that they're going to go and tend to go and favor the NFL route over getting bogged down in the collegiate game with all the recruiting and all the NIL and the transfer portal. And then certainly this is going to be, and it already is more so than it's been. And I don't have the numbers in front of me to confirm this from an age standpoint, but it appears to be so. When you look at the age of Michigan's coach, Ohio State's coach, Michigan State's coach, Minnesota, PJ Fleck still relatively young. Of course, Northwestern. You look at these teams, Purdue, and look at the age of their coaches. Lincoln Riley at USC is not necessarily a geriatric type. It's a young man's game, and it's becoming more and more a young man's game. And that these older coaches may think, I've gotten to a certain place in my career. I just want to coach football. I'm tired of the circus, and I'm just going to coach football, and I'm going to make a Chip Kelly kind of move. Ralph tells us Ralph was online looking at the exact wind metrics, 9 to 10 miles per hour. Wind is not that powerful. FBS quarterbacks should be able to throw through 15 to 20 miles per hour. Yeah, well, it was a factor, but it needs to be something that you can adjust to. That's for sure. Left-handed starting quarterbacks in the NFL, I do not believe so. I cannot think of any Lisa, Ohio State needs to go portaling for help, our offensive line, but I don't know if Fry is interested in doing that, but that's what he needs to do. Well, that's a decision that goes way beyond Justin Fry. Oh, duh. Yes, there's the obvious left-handed starting quarterback in Miami. Right, folks. So at 8 o'clock Eastern time tonight, we are going to bring on as many guests as possible. We're going to review as much information and as much video as possible between now and then to get set for Bama, LSU, Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky, Ole Miss, North Carolina, Miami, Purdue, Penn State come to mind as teams that have spring games today. So, a lot of spring games today. We are going to catch up with as much information, as many sources as possible. And we're going to go live at 8 o'clock Eastern Time over on the national channel, over on the main channel, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Get your notification. Thanks for being here. We don't have any other responses here. So we appreciate you being here on our Ohio State spring game post game. And again, 8 o'clock Eastern Time tonight. We'll talk more Buckeyes. We'll talk all the other teams that are participating in spring football games today. And we will see you at 8 o'clock Eastern.